The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes. The Adventure of the Blanched Soldier. The ideas of my friend Watson, though limited, are exceedingly pertinacious. For a long time he has worried me to write an experience of my own. Perhaps I have rather invited this persecution, since I have often had occasion to point out to him how superficial are his own accounts and to accuse him of pandering to popular taste instead of confining himself rigidly to fact and figures. "Try it yourself, Holmes," he has resorted. And I am compelled to admit that, having taken my pen in my hand, I do begin to realize that the matter must be presented in such a way as may interest the reader. The following case can hardly fail to do so, as it is among the strangest happenings in my collection, though it chanced that Watson had no note of it in his collection. Speaking of my old friend and biographer, I would take this opportunity to remark that if I burden myself with a companion in my various little inquiries, it is not done out of sentiment or caprice, but it is that Watson has some remarkable characteristics of his own, to which in his modesty he has given small attention, and his exaggerated estimate of my own performances. A confederate who foresees your conclusions and course of action is always dangerous, but one to whom each development comes as a perpetual surprise, and to whom the future is always a closed book, is indeed an ideal helpmate. I find from my notebook that it was in January 1903, just after the conclusion of the Boer War, that I had my visit from Mr. James M. Dodd, a big, fresh, sunburned, upstanding Briton. The good Watson had at that time deserted me for a wife, the only selfish action which I can recall in our association. I was alone. It is my habit to sit with my back to the window, and to place my visitors in the opposite chair, where the lights fall full upon them. Mr. James M. Dodd seemed somewhat at a loss how to begin the interview. I did not attempt to help him, for his silence gave me more time for observation. I have found it wise to impress clients with a sense of power, and so I gave him some of my conclusions. "From South Africa, sir, I perceive." "Yes, sir," he answered with some surprise. "Imperial Yeomanry, I fancy?" "Exactly. Middlesex Corps, no doubt." "That is so. Mr. Holmes, you are a wizard." When a gentleman of virile appearances enters my room with such tan upon his face as an English sun could never give, and with his handkerchief in his sleeve instead of his pocket, it is not difficult to place him. You wear a short beard, which shows that you were not a regular. You have the cut of a riding man. As to Middlesex, your card has already shown me that you are a stockbroker from Throgmorton Street. Which other regiment would you join? You see everything. I see no more than you, but I have trained myself to notice what I see. However, Mr. Dodd, it was not to discuss the science of observation that you called upon me this morning. What has been happening at Tewkesbury Old Park? Mr. Holmes, my dear sir, there is no mystery. Your letter came with that heading, and as you fixed this appointment in very pressing terms, it was clear that something sudden and important had occurred. Yes, indeed, but the letter was written in the afternoon, and a good deal has happened since then. If Colonel Emsworth had not kicked me out— "Kicked you out?" "Well, that was what it amounted to. He is a hard nail, is Colonel Emsworth. The greatest martinet in the army in this day, and it was a day of rough language, too. I couldn't have sucked the colonel if it had not been for Godfrey's sake." I lit my pipe and leaned back in my chair. "Perhaps you will explain what you are talking about." My client grinned mischievously. "I had got into the way of supposing that you knew everything without being told," said he. "But I will give you the facts, and I hope to God that you will be able to tell me what they mean. I've been awake all night puzzling my brain, and the more I think, the more incredible does it become. When I joined up in January 1901, just 2 years ago, young Godfrey Emsworth had joined the same squadron. He was Colonel Emsworth's only son, Emsworth, the Crimean V.C., and he had the fighting blood in him, so it is no wonder he volunteered. There was not a finer lad in the regiment. We formed a friendship, the sort of friendship which can only be made when one lives the same life and shares the same joys and sorrows. He was my mate, and that means a good deal in the army. We took the rough and the smooth together for a year of hard fighting. Then he was hit with a bullet from an elephant gun in the action near Diamond Hill, outside Pretoria. I got one letter from the hospital at Cape Town, and one from Southampton. Since then, not a word. Not one word, Mr. Holmes, for 6 months and more, and he my closest pal. Well, when the war was over and we all got back, I wrote to his father and asked where Godfrey was. No answer. I waited a bit, and then I wrote again. This time I had a reply, short and gruff. Godfrey had gone on a voyage round the world, and it was not likely that he would be back for a year. That was all. I wasn't satisfied, Mr. Holmes. The whole thing seemed to me so damned unnatural. He was a good lad, and he would not drop a pal like that. It was not like him. Then again, I happened to know that he was heir to a lot of money, and also that his father and he did not always hit it off too well. The old man was sometimes a bully, and young Godfrey had too much spirit to stand it. No, I wasn't satisfied, and I determined that I would get to the root of the matter. It happened, however, that my own affairs needed a lot of straightening out after 2 years' absence, and so it is only the week that I have been able to take up Godfrey's case again. But since I have taken it up, I mean to drop everything in order to see it through. Mr. James M. Dodd appeared to be the sort of person whom it would be better to have as a friend than as an enemy. His blue eyes were stern, and his square jaw had set hard as he spoke. "Well, what have you done?" I asked. My first move was to get down to his home, Tewkesbury Old Park, near Bedford, and to see for myself how the ground lay. I wrote to the mother, therefore. I had had quite enough of the curmudgeon of a father, and I made a clean frontal attack. Godfrey was my chum. I had a great deal of interest, which I might tell her of our common experiences. I should be in the neighbourhood. Would there be any objection, etc.? In reply, I had quite an amiable answer from her, and an offer to put me up for the night. That was what took me down on Monday. Tewkesbury Old Hall is inaccessible, 5 miles from anywhere. There was no trap at the station, so I had to walk, carrying my suitcase, and it was nearly dark before I had arrived. It is a great wandering house, standing in a considerable park. I should judge it was of all sorts of ages and styles, starting on the half-timbered Elizabethan foundation, and ending in a Victorian portico. Inside it was all panelling and tapestry, and half-effaced old pictures, a house of shadows and mystery. There was a butler, old Ralph, who seemed about the same age as the house, and there was his wife, who might have been older. She had been Godfrey's nurse, and I had heard him speak of her as second only to his mother in his affections, so I was drawn to her in spite of her queer appearance. The mother I liked also, a gentle little white mouse of a woman. It was only the colonel himself whom I barred. We had a bit of a barney right away, and I should have walked back to the station if I had not felt that it might be playing his game for me to do so. I was shown straight into his study, and there I found him, a huge, bow-backed man with a smoky skin and a straggling grey beard, seated behind his luttered desk. A red-veined nose jutted out like a vulture's beak, and 2 fierce grey eyes glared at me from under tufted brows. I could understand now why Geoffrey seldom spoke of his father. "Well, sir," said he in a rasping voice, "I should be interested to know the real reasons for this visit." I answered that I had explained them in my letter to his wife. Yes, you said that you had known Geoffrey in Africa. We have, of course, only your word for that. I have letters to me in my pocket. Kindly let me see them." He glanced at the 2 which I handed him, and then he tossed them back. "Well, what then?" he asked. "I was fond of your son Geoffrey, sir. Many ties and memories united us. It is not natural that I should wonder at his sudden silence, and should wish to know what had become of him. I have some recollection, sir, that I had already corresponded with you, and had told you what had become of him. He was gone upon a voyage round the world. His health was in a poor way after his African experience, and both his mother and I were of opinion that complete rest and change were needed. Kindly pass that explanation on to any other friends who may be interested in the matter." "Certainly," I answered, "but perhaps you would have the goodness to let me have the name of the steamer and of the line by which he sailed, together with the date. I have no doubt that I should be able to get a letter through to him." My request seemed both to puzzle and to irritate my host. His great eyebrows came down over his eyes, and he tapped his fingers impatiently on the table.